This is part 4 of our series highlighting the main points of Timothy Alberino's book, Birthright, The Coming Post-Human Apocalypse and the Usurpation of Adam's Dominion on Planet Earth. Today, we're examining the new global religion we are being socially engineered towards, and if we have time, we'll get into Alberino's concept of the alien threat and UFOs. To persuade the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve to relinquish their birthright, we had to be untethered from divine accountability and the notion that there were severe consequences to ignoring or opposing the laws of God. Humanity, its God-given genome corrupted with the mingling of genetics of those watcher angels in rebellion, had their high-tech antediluvian golden age wiped out off the face of the earth by the great flood of Noah. So to turn the heads of men and women back towards the self-styled gods with a small g, and away from our original purposes and life meaning, we could no longer believe in the great flood and fear he who sent it. This task was delegated by the enemy to the surging new belief system of scientism in the 19th century. The initial charge was armed with the theories of Lyell, delineated in our part 3, and which destroyed in people's minds the reality of the Great Flood, and of Darwin, who opened new floodgates of evolutionary potential. When coupled with the Gnostic occultism of secret societies like the Freemasons, this implied the possibility of people evolving through evolutionary steps of initiation and by degrees becoming their own gods. This has enormous ramifications for our present and future. This is the genesis of the new religion. In Alberino's words, conceived in the womb of Darwinism, in the effusion of natal blood, it came forth with eugenics, with racism, with concentration camps, with gulags and death squads, with hundreds of millions of lives lost across Europe and Asia. More people died in democide, which is death by government, in the century following Darwin than in all human history combined. God was no longer to be feared. Man would define his own authority. So don't fall for it when somebody tells you the lie that religion causes all the wars. It is precisely those ideologies opposed to Abrahamic religion, such as Nazism and communism, that have caused the bulk of sanctioned murder on this planet. Those who have done so in the name of God were generally liars, justifying their greed and displaying the to-be expected fallen human behavior hidden behind a false mask of religion. Marxism, claiming scientific materialism and allegedly riding the insurmountable wave of history, inevitably produces utopian visionaries steadfast in their arrogance that man can build a better world. But if you oppose their vision of utopia, you forfeit your freedom, if not your life. Yet young idealists adore a bloodthirsty psychopath like Che Guevara with the same zeal they now denigrate and in the future will persecute the body of Messiah. So in the 20th century, technology and Luciferianism blossom together. Evolution moved rapidly from denying the flood to defying the Almighty. Nietzsche's career in atheism was embraced and promoted by the super rich who saw redemption and freedom from morality. He openly advocated immorality, declaring himself a disciple of Dionysius. He proclaimed that God is dead and that there was no such thing as objective good and evil. The self-created Superman or Overman was beyond good and evil. The purpose of evolution was to give birth to the Overman, the superior man, the Superman. Decades later, this sentiment was echoed by androgynous glam rocker David Bowie, a one-time Aleister Crowley devotee. David Bowie, on his 1971 album Hunky Dory, said, "Homo sapiens has outlived its use. Better make way for the Homo superior." Much sooner, though, this concept of Superman was to disfigure the already twisted pagan minds of Hitler and the Nazis. Nietzsche's fawning acolytes have disingenuously protested this connection ever since. But Hitler was greatly interested in a philosophy that stated the strong have the evolutionary right and responsibility to subdue the weak. Exercising his Dionysian freedom from morality, Nietzsche spent the last years of his life stark raving mad, his brain eaten by syphilis contracted from a prostitute. Like Nietzsche, Aleister Crowley was another pastor's son who was to lay the early foundations for the new religion of our future. Crowley confessed that he believed in God, he just decided to oppose him, and he reveled in being known as the Beast or 666. He heralded the coming age of Horus, the era of the crowned and conquering child. Some see reflected in the 19th card of the tarot deck, the Sun. Crowley, born in 1875, had early on affiliated with Madame Blavatsky's Theosophical Society and was initiated into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn while at Cambridge. In 1903, he attained notoriety by spending his wedding night in the Great Pyramid of Giza, invoking the ancient gods. His wife, Rose, became entranced by demons and kept on repeating dreamily, yet intensely, "They are waiting for you." She said the god waiting for him was Horus. His bride, Rose, had no previous experience in magic, and Crowley decided to test the revelation in the Egyptian Museum of Antiquities, asking her if she could identify Horus. Again in a trance state, she rushed through the museum and found a form of Horus at exhibit 666. She told Crowley that he was the herald of the new age of Horus Apollo, and that gods and men would commingle once again. In 1904, Crowley claimed visitation by a bald otherworldly figure named Aiwass, who gave voice to 3 Egyptian deities on the stela of exhibit 666 in the museum. Thus, in several sessions was Crowley's blasphemous Book of the Law dictated. The core of his philosophy was "do as thou wilt," a phrase and attitude promulgated by Jay-Z and others. This is lawlessness, under which Crowley proclaimed every man and woman is a star, like the Sly and the Family Stone song said in the 1960s, and as Hollywood indoctrinates undiscerning minds to worship and fantasize over. As with the Theosophical Society, Crowley's symbol was a black hexagram unicursal, a black star, emblematic of the 7 dragon princes mentioned previously in this series, who were in rebellion against God. Crowley was commissioned with kindling the spirit of rebellion, the black stars in the hearts of men, to prepare them for the coming of Apollo and the gods. He was designated the beast and his wife the Scarlet Woman. Stars shine only at night, and people must be made to love the darkness if they are to embrace the glory of the black star within them. And so it was Crowley's mandate to bring forth from people all that is mentioned in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 2 through 4. To love themselves and money, to boast, to blaspheme, to be disobedient, unforgiving, despisers of the good, lovers of pleasure instead of God. Black stars are fallen morning stars with allegiance to Lucifer, the original morning star. The black hexagram has 6 points, but with its center, it encodes the number 7 and symbolizes the insurgency of the elder race in that first rebellion against God. The black pentagram encodes the number 6, the number of a man, and symbolizes their human counterparts. Black Star is the name of David Bowie's final album. In the video for the title song, the beast is summoned to attack the Messiah, who is depicted as a Jewish criminal hanging on a cross. Just prior to the beast's appearance, 10 women are seen performing a birthing ritual. These women represent the mothers who will give birth to the 10 bestial kings, the hybrid progeny of the fallen morning stars. So Nietzsche and Crowley have had enormous impact on the social political climate of the modern era. Hitler's campaign of eugenics to weed out the weak and racially inferior is directly founded on Nietzsche's evolutionary paradigm. The philosopher's contempt for Christian morals is promulgated from the lecterns of major universities across the world. Crowley and his cult of Thelema are evident in almost every major chart-topping band from the late 60s to the late 80s. The music industry and TV and movies owe a huge debt to Crowley's philosophy. Regarding atheism regarding Yahweh, the God of the Bible, soon evolves into apotheotheism, the belief that man can become God himself. This belief adheres to 3 principles. Number 1, the overman or superman is the purpose of evolution. Number 2, the gods do exist and we will become like them. And number 3, man will depose Yahweh. So strangely, we have atheists who believe in extraterrestrials who created humankind. This paves the way for fallen angels to return to earth and make this claim in what some people call the Great Deception. The new religion will combine scientific biological enhancement with what Gnostic occultist and R. Buckminster Fuller acolyte Barbara Marx Hubbard calls conscious evolution. This same doctrine was put forth by Jesuit priest Teilhard de Chardin, who has been accused by prominent professors of being behind the infamous Piltdown Man evolution missing link fraud, which combined human and ape bones and put them forth as the missing link in evolution. This coming world religion will complement a global government devised supposedly to establish order out of the coming chaos of economic collapse, war, civil strife, plague, and who knows what. Apollo will arrive at our darkest hour to save us from the end of the world brought on by the aforementioned and perhaps by alien invasion, comets on course to crash into Earth, famine, or climate catastrophe. All of the foundations have been laid. The Roman Catholic Church, which hopes to shepherd in the one world religion, is making a point of watering down doctrine and saying we are all worshiping the same God no matter what religion. Liberal Christianity and the emerging church movement makes the gospel appeal more broadly by avoiding the uncomfortable subjects such as sin, damnation, and repentance, discarded in favor of more attractive messages about social justice or prosperity. From here, Alberino takes us into his chapter on the alien threat. In the 1890s, newspapers around the world carried stories of mystery airship sightings that sound like the steampunk fantasies of Jules Verne. In June of 1947, pilot Kenneth Arnold reported 9 boomerang-shaped objects near Mount Rainier, Washington, skipping through the sky like saucers over a water surface. Thus was born the flying saucer phenomenon. The next month, July 1947, saw the Roswell incident. Coming to light later, but occurring 3 days before the Kenneth Arnold sighting, and also in Washington State, was the Maury Island incident, which, as has been mentioned on this channel, involved several figures whose names would surface publicly 20 years later in the JFK assassination investigation conducted by New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison. This incident also marked the debut of the legendary Men in Black. Also early on, during World War II, fighter pilots reported the so-called Foo Fighters, luminescent orbs, and likely reconnaissance drones dispatched from UFOs, trailing their aircraft at a greater distance. Orbs are seen frequently in conjunction with UFO sightings and have been seen deploying from cigar and disc-shaped aircraft. After 70 years, the Pentagon finally broke its silence. In December 2017, the premier power elite organ New York Times published an article on a video from a fighter jet of a UFO moving at impossible speed. 2 years later, the Navy admitted the footage was genuine. In April 2020, most people preoccupied with the worldwide CV-19 and sheltering at home, the Department of Defense released 3 UFO videos, including the aforementioned one. They conceded that the subject was real and implied it was a potential threat. This was the first affirmative acknowledgement of flying saucers by the U.S. military since the retracted Roswell press release in 1947. 3 months later, again in the New York Times, astrophysicist Eric W. Davis claimed to have examined materials retrieved from off-world vehicles not made on this earth, to quote him. Wow. That may not be on the scale of the George Floyd civil unrest a few weeks prior, but you figure a story like that should have been everywhere for at least a little while. Admitting that UFOs are real is a confession that we cannot stop them from trafficking through our airspace. There are physical objects on radar. These are physical objects on radar and not supernatural ones as some evangelical Christians believe, even though supernatural is not a word or concept found in the Bible. So who builds and pilots these craft? From the 40s to the 80s, there was not much information on these flying saucer occupants, although we hope to do a video on this channel on the very pertinent information from the early contactees. But since the 80s, there have been thousands of reported cases of alien abduction. One supposes that information was released in order to maximize the impact of a predetermined timeline of events. In Alberino's view, the alien abduction phenomenon is the most important thing happening on planet Earth. The author contends that for more than a century, hundreds of millions of people all over the world have been systematically abducted by non-human entities and involuntarily incorporated into a highly organized clandestine breeding program. These abductors, when interviewed by a competent professional, tell the same general story with the same set of basic details, even though the majority of them are entirely unfamiliar with abduction research material and relatively uninterested in UFOs. The abductees span every walk of life. Dr. David Jacobs of Temple University and Dr. John Mack of Harvard have spent their entire careers as examining the abduction phenomenon with scientific scrutiny. They have concluded that alien abduction and the breeding program it entails is as routine for many people as getting up in the morning and going to work. Dr. Mack, a psychiatrist, has stated that any alternative psychiatric theory would have to account for the following 5 dimensions of the phenomenon. 1, the high degree of consistency of detailed abduction accounts, reported with emotion appropriate to actual experiences told by apparently reliable observers. Number 2, the absence of psychiatric illness or apparent psychological or emotional factors that could account for what is being reported. Number 3, the physical changes and lesions affecting the bodies of the experiencers which follow no evident psychodynamic pattern. Number 4, the association with UFOs witnessed independently by others while abductions are taking place, which the abductee may not see. Number 5, the reports of abductions by children as young as 2 or 3 years of age. Dr. David Jacobs is a Temple University historian. He cites several factors to be considered by those who believe in some alternative to the alien abduction phenomenon. Number 1, when people are abducted, they are physically missing from their normal environment. Number 2, people are sometimes abducted in groups and can confirm each other's reports. Number 3, bystanders sometimes see people being abducted. Number 4, when returned to their normal environment after an abduction, people often have marks, cuts, bruises, broken bones, and even fully formed scars, which is a biological impossibility that were not there before the abduction. Number 5, when returned, people sometimes have their clothes inside out or backwards, or they are wearing someone else's clothes. In these cases, they clearly remember dressing themselves correctly beforehand. Number 6, most of what abductors described are not antecedents in popular, there are no antecedents for them in popular culture. Number 7, abductions occur at all times of the day and night, depending on access to the abductees and when they will least be missed. Abductees need not be sleeping. Number 8, abductions begin in childhood and continue with varying frequency into old age. Number 9, the abduction phenomenon is intergenerational. The children of abductees are often themselves reporting being abducted, as do their children. And finally, number 10, abductions are unrelated to alcohol and drugs. We will continue Alberino's discussion of the alien threat in part 5. This is Gumbo Craig, and this is now Future Visions and Distant Echoes. But we are still, all of us, walking out of Babylon together. All glory to the Most High God. Shalom.